good, Makla Rasati out here in Singapore? And obviously, you are here back with me on the Night Out podcast. So grateful, you guys, because I really do enjoy talking to you guys. I really kind of wish I could sit here and entertain your comments, your thoughts as I'm speaking, but obviously, I'm recording it first and then posting it because back in the day, I used to do this live on Facebook with Facebook Live audio where people could join in and ask me questions, and I would just record it and keep it the way it was anyway. My apologies, I keep anywaying. So, without further ado, let's get into it, right? So, today's topic is actually I think it's a Keanu Reeves quote. I've been coming across a lot of quotes lately with like the wrong images and the wrong scenes, but the quote is poignant. So, hey, I share it because I can, and I think it's relevant at the time. I think recently I posted something to do with the scene in the background was from I don't even know because I don't even watch the show. Goodness. Peaky Blinders. And the scene was something to the effect of the main character was getting ready to be killed and buried, and then the quote had nothing to do with that, but it was from a different source. But the point being that I liked the imagery, the expression on his face was, relevant to the quote at the time, and I posted it, and people corrected me, but they shared the hell out of that too. So hey, either way, the quote is actually relevant. So tonight's quote is this one. It says, "Self-love is not just cutting toxic people from your life, but also cutting ties with the version of yourself who allowed the relationship to continue as long as it did." And you know what? I had to learn that the hard way. For a long time, I beat myself up for staying in my marriage for too long, for allowing all the things that happened, over and over again, actually. I was not strong enough at some point to be able to stand up and say, no, I'm not okay with this, and I don't like you for doing this, and this hurts my feelings, and this hurts my body, this hurts me. And I did not stand up for myself, and I allowed. It repeated, and finally it came to a head, and I just couldn't take it anymore. And I was like, you know what? I'm out. Peace. So eventually I had to go back after I had left the relationship and deal with the fact that, hey, how could I have allowed this to continue as long as it did? How did I manage to stay in a relationship for 8 years, knowing all of the warning signs, knowing all of the red flags, living through half of them, allowing them to continue the way that it did? Why was I not strong enough to stand up earlier? Why didn't I say something earlier? Why didn't I, draw a line, a boundary, just speak up? Because if it had happened to anybody else, I would have said something. But obviously, I can't talk to that person. They no longer exist. And once I recognize that that person that was in that relationship no longer exists, I was able to kind of forgive that girl as if it was a different human being and allow for her to be as she needed to be at the time in order for me to be who I am now. So she served a purpose. I had to go through some troubling times. I had to go through the school of hard knocks to get to this place now where I am a little bit better, not much, but a little bit better about speaking up for myself and telling people when they're hurting me. But even still, it took me a long time. I used to wonder how people are so strong to leave abusive relationships. And mine was not physically abusive, but to me, it was mentally abusive. And I've heard like some stories, like real horror stories about how women have, endured some really crazy situations. Even some men, where the woman was very, very controlling and they were a little bit more passive, and they had to endure some very insulting and humiliating times before they found their threshold and was like, you know what, enough is enough. I'm walking the hell out of here to preserve my own state of health and wellness, to reestablish who I am, because I am my own person. I don't belong to you. I am not owned by you. I don't need to be controlled by you, like all of those things. But it took me a long time. So I went through a phase of being very, very sad that I had done this terrible thing where I broke something that was holding a lot of people together. And then I went through a phase of, I was so mad at myself. Why did I wait this long? Because look at how many people it affected now. And I could have, done some damage control if I had done it just way back in the beginning. And then on top of that, it was like, how do I apologize to the people that were affected? How do I ask for forgiveness from those people, knowing that I'm just this, terrible person that waited so long and affected so many and hurt so many people. It destroyed everyone's image of who I was, who he was, what the kids saw was normal, what wasn't normal, like all of those things. I really put myself through the ringer because guess what? I can't hold him accountable. I can't hold him accountable. I can't hold anyone else accountable but myself. And a lot of times I see this with a lot of my clients as well. They will beat themselves up. I could have done this. I should have done that. I allowed it. This is my fault. All of this is my fault. I created this chaos. What the heck is wrong with me? And then they go into this spiral of how terrible they are and how could they deserve a second chance? Like they'll be lucky. Abortion, right? One of those topics no one wants to talk about. I went through a situation where, like, how did I even get to a place where I deserved to have a child of my own? And how does God see fit for me to even be with anybody after this? Because look at these terrible things that I've done. Like, this is murder, And as much as I would never say that to somebody else, if somebody had come to me and told me my story as if it were their own, I would definitely have compassion for them, and I would definitely be so proud of how far they've come and how much they've risked, eventually to just stand their ground and get to this place where they're safe and they're happy now. They had to undo a lot of, unnecessary knots in their life, and they're in this place now where they feel a lot better, they're safer, they're smarter, they're stronger, more healthy. I would have so much compassion for them. But for some reason, when it is your own story and you turn it inward, you're not that forgiving, you're not that compassionate, you're definitely not kind, which you really should be. But if we're the fifth, we'd all be drunk. So if I had been more compassionate, I think I would have gotten over things a lot easier. But think about any breakup or any situation where you've been let go. Maybe it's an exit interview. Maybe it's a situation where you're saying goodbye to somebody. Maybe you got in a fight with somebody and next thing you know, that person happened to pass away, and you're beating yourself up for the fact that the last conversation you had was not that great and they didn't know how much they meant to you because you didn't have that chance to say it because you were upset. Maybe you held a grudge. I don't know. It could be any one of those things. But if you notice, right, we don't tend to forgive ourselves that much. I remember for a long time I wasn't sure if I caused a misunderstanding between my mother and my father or not. And I didn't know if I imagined all of the things that I lived through as a child. But when I went to go confront my mom and tell her, the things that I lived through and how embarrassed I was and how shocked I was, and I wasn't sure, what was going on, I didn't know how to forgive the fact that I was a child at the time and I didn't know better. And even if I had that gut feeling, I didn't have the courage or the encouragement to stand my ground and say something to an elder person where they should have known better. And it was a long time before I could even come to acknowledge the fact that I was a victim. I did not ask for any of those things. I did not lead anyone on. I didn't give anyone any, misconceived notions. I didn't pretend like it was okay. But because I didn't say anything, they took it to mean that there was nothing to be ashamed of on their end, so they continued the behavior. So it took a lot for me. It's been many, many layers of forgiving myself at different junctures of my life, because the decisions I made at the time I thought were the only options that I had available to me that had the least amount of damage. But looking back now, there were other options. I know better. Hindsight is 2020, and that's something we need to consider as well. So for those of you out there who are really wrestling with, what you could have done in the past, what you should have done instead. You knew better, but you didn't do it. Maybe it was a fear that popped up. Maybe you were scared of somebody leaving, scared of the scandal, that everyone would judge you, the shame, the humiliation, whatever you thought at the time. It's okay. You were allowed to think that. And I want you to know that as harsh as we may be with ourselves, if you were to pretend that somebody came to you and told you that story, you know how you would react. You know how you would encourage them or be compassionate and kind to them and give them the benefit of the doubt that they didn't see any other options, and so they did the best that they could. And if you can separate it that way, as if you're the person you were 5 years ago or 5 months ago or even 5 minutes ago is a completely different entity, you will find it easier to forgive. I didn't know any better. I could have done, absolutely could have done better. I could have studied harder. I could have, gone on to get my PhD. I could have gotten a job at my alma mater, Fuqua school. I could have gone back and taught if I wanted to. There's so many things I could have done. But I can't go back and change any of those things right now. I got to deal with what is. And so once the deed is done, once this decision has been made, you got to deal with what is, which means sometimes in order for you to feel good about yourself again, you got to disassociate from the person who did make all those mistakes and say, you know what, no, I'm a brand new person, blank slate, I'm starting all over again from experience, not from square one, but from experience. And I forgive the version of me that doesn't know what they know now, that isn't or wasn't able to do the things that they are now. And because they weren't at the time, things happened the way that they did, and it's okay. We're going to start from here though, and we're going to move forward again. So I hope this helps. I hope you find a little compassion from me so that you can, absorb it and give it to yourself, your younger self, your former self, and find a way to forgive those mistakes you've made. They're never useless mistakes, unless of course you're making the exact same mistake over and over again, which at that point you need to think about why it is that you're not learning and adjusting so that it doesn't happen again. But for the most part, if you're able to look at it like, yeah, damn, I made a mistake. Okay, so now what do I do? I can't beat myself up anymore because I'm not in that moment. I'm in this moment now. So what can I do going forward? How can I move into the future? How can I move toward my goal a little more strategically because I know what happened in the past and what is possible, and I know I'm not that same person anymore, so I know better now. I should do better. So I'm hoping this helps. I hope it gives you a little bit of inspiration to pick yourself up and keep on moving, carry that torch a little bit longer. And if you have any questions, as always, please hit me up. Let me know. I want to hear from you guys. I want to be able to help. But in the meantime, this quote, really, self-love is not just cutting toxic people from your life, but also cutting ties with the version of yourself who allowed the relationship to continue for as long as it did. Because at the time, you didn't know what you know now. And so you can forgive yourself. It's important to forgive yourself. Okay? I love you guys. I hope this helped, and I'll catch you again soon. Bye.